In the other videos, we've talked about some of the building codes and how you can design a home to be much more hurricane safe. I won't say hurricane proof, but hurricane safe. But there's other mitigation strategies that happen on a much higher level that are really important as well. And the reason why this is so important is because mitigation, the money you spend now to put in these features, it ain't cheap, but it's a whole lot cheaper than fixing everything afterwards. So it says here $1 in mitigation will do the same work as saving $6 to fix everything later after a hurricane. So one of the most important things is to be able to predict and track hurricanes, to understand what's going on out in our oceans and what it's going to do in the future and where those storms are heading and where it's going to make landfall. Because you want to know as soon as you can to get people safe. For the most part, when these really big hurricanes, the only thing you can do is leave. But to enact evacuations of urban areas is not easy, and it cannot wait to the last minute when you're a lot more certain about what the storm is doing. So one of the most important things are weather satellites. Now, NASA puts those up in the air. And NOAA has weather satellites. NASA does as well. There's a few entities that have them up there. And these are the same satellites that give the data that the Weather Channel or your local meteorologist use when they tell you about the weather on the news. So these are really important in terms of being able to see them and track them in real time. There's also weather buoys that are out in the ocean. You can see that's a NOAA too. That is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric something or other. I really should have looked that up, shouldn't I? Just NOAA does a lot of ocean stuff. So there's weather buoys out in the middle of the ocean just floating around, and they have a satellite hookup, but they measure wind, air pressure, water pressure, temperature, all that stuff that you need to know to see those places where hurricanes might form. Now, one of the key things to knowing what a hurricane is going to do is computer models. Now, it may be kind of hard to wrap your head around a computer model, right? Because it's just a computer. It's making guesses. But they're a lot better than that. And what we've seen is over the past 30 years, an incredible increase in the power and the accuracy of computer models, especially at this point when we're talking about, big data, using lots and lots and lots of data and feeding it through these really big supercomputers and seeing what it chunks out at the end. So these are really, really important. And it's not just guesses, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into computer modeling. For instance, it takes into account data from satellites and buoys, which we've already talked about. It has past storm tracks, ocean temperature, ocean topography, and current atmospheric conditions that all go together. So one of the things that these computer models can do is predict what may happen during a specific storm season. It can also watch short-term changes in individual storms. So this is the result of a computer model for Hurricane Katrina on August 28th, 2005. So this is before it made landfall. And so this is the cone of uncertainty. Good science will always tell you what they don't know or how unsure they are, because there's a lot of things that are never quite certain. And really good science tells you they're not certain, and it tells you just how not certain they are. But you can see kind of in the shortest term, the uncertainty is pretty narrow. But as you get further and further along in the story, further and further in the future, that you get less and less sure about it. But this one actually did a really good job, and Hurricane Katrina followed pretty much this exact path. But it tells you, where the storm center is going to be and how strong it's going to be, whether it's a hurricane strength storm or it weakens down into just a tropical storm or just a depression, which you could see that they were forecasting for Wednesday after it made landfall. And this is what we turn to make a lot of decisions, but for a government to decide to evacuate everybody from the area, even from Sunday morning to Monday morning, that's 2 days. That's a pretty wide sort of uncertainty at this point on this particular map. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to move a classroom full of people out the door in a timely fashion. It takes a little while, let alone moving the millions of people who might live in areas along the coast of Florida or New Orleans or Houston, Texas. I mentioned the hurricane hunters earlier in one of the videos. This is a special group from the U.S. Air Force who works in conjunction with NOAA to go in and take direct measurements from the hurricane. So they actually fly directly through the hurricanes a number of times. And some of our most amazing shots from hurricanes come from these pilots. And that's their specially modified plane for you. Now, of course, making sure people know what to do, making sure people know how to protect their homes, how to build their homes, what building codes are, making sure they know where to go in the event of an evacuation, or at what point are they in danger. And so this is actually the evacuation zones along the Texas coast. I'll give you lots of Texas examples just because I happen to be from there. But here you can actually see the Houston area with both of its loops. You can see Galveston Island just off the coast there. So you can see it, the evacuation is sort of based on severity. In, smaller storms, they will evacuate only the very coastal areas. But in really big storms, they'll evacuate all the way to sort of central Houston on the Gulf side of it. So making sure people know exactly what zone they are in and exactly when and if they need to go. But of course, you gotta convince people they need to go, right? This is a really interesting look at how badly things can go. This is a traffic jam. You might have noticed that. So this is on I-45. I-45 goes north out of Houston all the way up to Dallas. So it's a major artery for those two big Texas cities. In 2008, Hurricane Katrina hit the coast of New Orleans, or in Louisiana, and specifically kind of in the New Orleans area that we think of. And it went really bad. Just a few weeks later, Hurricane Rita was making a pass at Texas. And it really scared a lot of people. And so a lot of people in the Houston area really took this evacuation stuff seriously, and everybody decided to get the hell out. I was living up further north Texas at the time, but we actually had people evacuating even into my hometown at the time to try to get up there. But Houston has millions of people, and everybody started heading out at the same time, and they all started heading the same way. So you can see they ended up turning all the lanes of I-45 to only go north. If you look, everybody's coming at us. And if you could see where the ambulance is sort of over on the right side of the image, that's the southbound lanes. But that's all coming north too. And you can see where they've got the on-ramps and stuff completely shut down. And then if you look on the northbound side, even the feeder road is jam-packed with cars. What happened though is you see the cars sitting in the middle there of the grass. People ran out of gas. Now it's 100 degrees. Houston in September, it was miserable, and people were running out of gas because they were moving so slow. On a normal day, if you were going from Houston to Dallas, it should take you less than 4 hours, which is pretty good considering how big Texas is, right? It's about 4 hours less if you drive fast. On this particular moment in this evacuation, the people trying to go to Dallas, it took them between 24 and 36 hours of being on the road that whole time and just barely moving, which is just kind of horrific to think about. Now, there's a couple of major arteries going out of Houston. So I-45 goes to Dallas. There's another road that goes to San Antonio. It's I-10 that goes to San Antonio. That one moved a little bit faster and only took them 16 hours to get to San Antonio. Unfortunately, what happened then is Rita wasn't quite as bad as they were expecting. So those 3 million people that evacuated in a very short period of time, it took them about 48 hours total to clear out all of this traffic jam. It wasn't that bad. There were only 9 people killed in the storm itself. But there were 110 people killed because of the evacuation. A lot of those were people on the road moving and in traffic jams. Out of those, there were 23 people who were actually killed in one bus. There was a bus carrying 45 nursing home patients or residents from the Houston area, and they were taking them up to Dallas to ride out the storm. We know that nursing home residents tend to be elderly or disabled, and so they are particularly vulnerable. Especially after Hurricane Katrina, we saw kind of what horrific things can happen in a nursing home situation in a hurricane. So they evacuated all the residents, which made total sense, except there were 23 people killed because there was some sort of an electrical fire on the bus, and the bus caught fire south of Dallas. As many people as they could get off, were able to get off the bus, but unfortunately, like half of the people on the bus were killed. So what does this all kind of mix together to show us right now, right? We are in the 2020 season as I'm recording this video, but we are not super far into it. It is September 6th, late at night on 2020. And we're just really getting into the height of hurricane season yet. But so far, this is a record-breaking 6th straight season with 2 preseason named storms. So we got an early start, although I mentioned in another video, the earliest is January 3rd. But that was a rather large anomaly. But 6 years with preseason storms is pretty scary. It is the 2020 holds the record for the earliest formation date of a whole bunch of storms in there. So this is the earliest we've ever had: a 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, and 3rd named storm. I'm not sure what happened to the 4th one. We had a record-tying 2 named storms in May. Those are your preseason storms. And a record-tying 5 storms in July. And broke a record with 6 tropical depressions in July. It just didn't get strong enough to become a storm. This is the first season on record to have 9 tropical storms before August. And there were 13 of them before September. Now, I know I am creating this video for the folks listening right now. But for any of you in the future, 2020 is a rough year. We don't need these horrible hurricanes on top of everything else. At least we skipped the murder hornets, right? But just as the semester was starting, Hurricane Laura hit the coast of New Orleans and caused some pretty significant damage in Lake Charles. And so we are already off to a pretty nasty kind of start for these landfalls. And that was like 1 or 2 storms making landfall all at the same time from the Gulf of Mexico. So yeah, let's hope it gets better.